gentlemen, it is a special day today, as it always is. Today is all about Resident Evil, our love for it, the lore, the franchise, Resident Evil 4 Remake. While we won't speak much about the game itself because we are before the reviews are due, we will talk a little bit about the chainsaw demo, and we have a very special guest to do that with. So I want to welcome everybody to our show, the kick ass Gris Dis from Never Enough Toys podcast. I've been a special guest on their show before 2 times. I want to return the favor. Thank you so much for being here, brother. How you
Thanks for
doing
having
today?
me. Thanks for having me, Tyler and Ben. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, thank
Love
you.
the show.
We love your
Thanks,
show
man.
too, and I'm loving what I'm seeing in front of you. You got me hyped. We
Yep.
got a lot of stuff there. We'll definitely go through a little bit of things when it comes to the games, some merch, and we'll have kind of a casual discussion about again a love of Resident Evil. And towards the end of the show, we'll talk a little bit about the demo, get excited for Resident Evil 4 remake, and we'll close the show out with a bang. How's that sound?
Awesome.
Love
Cool,
it.
cool. So, Chris, we'll get started with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those that are not familiar. What you're about, what you love. Obviously, we know you're a Resident Evil fan, but there's a lot more going on behind you. So,
Yeah. I've been a toy collector my entire life. I've been a video game collector my entire life. And we've been in bands together. We're both musicians. So we have a rich history of getting together on lots of projects. As you see, some of the stuff that's in front of you comes from actually Ben's collection. Some of this stuff we preserved and kept from childhood, and it's here, and it's all in the family. Keeping it all together. Some of the games here I probably got from you at Funko Land back in the day.
wow,
Oh,
throwback.
yeah, we have a long history, Ben and I, so it's great to still be, fostering an awesome relationship all these years later and talking about the things that we love. And I not only love toys but video games, and especially Resident Evil. So this episode just stuck out. It was like, I want to be involved.
Hell yeah.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's really, really cool. And, I forget how long we have known each other because obviously we worked at the retail as well
Yeah.
for several years. But, I forgot that we knew each other as early back as Funko Land. For those that are not familiar, Funko Land is a game store that was around for a bit, I think around the US for the most part. I don't know how many stores they had, but there was a point where um, before GameStop existed in name, GameStop was originally known as Babbage's, and
Yes.
Babbage's bought Funko Land. So I worked at Funko Land. Funko Land was bought by Babbage's. I then became a Babbage's employee. Then Babbage's turned into GameStop, and then GameStop bought Electronics Boutique, and then it
Yep.
all became GameStop. And I worked at every single one of them.
There you go.
Useless knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, so awesome, awesome. Again, there's a lot of love here today. So
Yeah.
let's go right to the basics. Let's talk about Resident Evil as a whole. The franchise has been around since 1996. All right. Has everybody here played the games since then? I know Tyler, I know Chris, I'm the older one here, but I know you've probably played a lot of that older stuff. But let's start with Tyler. Where was your first Resident Evil experience? What
I'm gonna
game?
get crucified for this, but Resident Evil 5.
All right. Yeah.
Okay,
Resident
okay.
Evil 5 was the first one that I played and really got hooked on. And I have since gone back and played the whole franchise. But Resident Evil 5 was the very first one that I actually cut my teeth on with a buddy of mine back in high school, or I guess it was probably middle school. But we played together and did everything. We played every weekend. We'd get on and play, and we got the unlimited ammo rocket launcher, and we went through on professional and killed everything. But that was where it started. So it was weird having the game that is, mostly considered not so great, that stepped away from the survival horror and went more towards the action side of the franchise. It was weird having that be the first one and then going back and seeing, oh, okay, I see where this came from, but this was so different than what I guess fans probably wanted and expected out of the franchise.
No, that's
I
an
say
interesting take.
I'm not even mad that that's your first game, because honestly, that's a co-op, like, just buddy
Oh yeah.
class. That's,
Yeah,
if somebody brings you along, they're like, dude, you got to check out this game. Just a great experience.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it was. It was just
Yeah,
a friend of mine that was like, "Dude, I love this. You need to play this with me." And I was like, "All right, cool. Let's do it."
absolutely.
I can agree with you both and say that I had some great memories with that game. It was one of the first co-op experiences that they did. They had a couple prior, but that was the first they kind of did with online and voice communication. Because if anybody
Hmm.
remembers, we had Resident Evil Outbreak prior to that, and for me, that was a very important connection piece for some of my close friends over the years.
Yeah,
One of my best friends, Andrew, friend of the show, has, we met kind of like right after I met my wife in 2003, and he worked at GameStop. I was at Best Buy, and we connected by mutual friends, and we picked that game up and we played that game, and there was no mic. It was, you had
Yeah,
certain button presses to kind of initiate certain dialogue for the character, and that's how you talked in the game, unless you like got on your cell phone, which was crazy.
yep,
And you played as this, for those that never played the game, you played as just like a civilian, and you tried to survive in like the realm of the Resident Evil 2 timeline. So like when Raccoon City is kind of getting ransacked, and it was an amazing experience for the time. It's a game that I hope that they kind of revitalize out of everything that they've done, because it would work so well in the co-op world now. But again, it paved the way for a game like Resident Evil 5 that really, there's so much to appreciate for the game. I get a lot of the anger and stuff like that when comparing it. But when you go back, there's very critical story points, for people that are into the lore of the game too.
oh yeah,
Obviously there's not spoilers here, ladies and gentlemen, for a game that,
yeah,
where that's not out, brand new. But,
yeah.
we had big return of Jill, which was huge.
yep,
We had other stuff with Boulder punching Chris. I think that was one of the
yeah,
biggest things to turn people off. Chris was literally, just like juice bag. Like it was
He was an
crazy
action
how big.
hero. They turned him
Yeah, it
into an
was
action
crazy.
hero. Yeah.
And it's funny that, for those that have played Village, I believe you both have,
Oh
and
yeah.
you've both beaten it, correct?
oh yeah,
Multiple
But
times.
yeah, yeah,
and you fight
100% on
and you
Steam.
fight a you fight a certain guy at the end, and you
Hmm.
get a reference to Chris, that boulder
Hmm.
punching asshole. I
Yep.
yep,
mean, come on, you can't get any better than that. So we acknowledge the game at that point too. But again, nothing wrong with RE5 being a
yeah,
first experience. So sweet,
totally,
Chris.
absolutely.
What about you?
So for me, like you said, I was a little bit younger when the games came out. So the first game, my first experience with Resident Evil 1 was through gaming magazines. I would just stare and stare at the pictures and be like, wow, what is this game? I want to play this so bad. And I wasn't really allowed to play, really crazy games, or if I got away with it, it was like, oh, I'm renting this game from, Palmer Video or Blockbuster or whatever it was.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
we just sneak in. I saw this isn't the right cover, but this is the
Oh
Gamecom
my God, this guy's got the
Wow.
Gamecom or RE2.
yeah.
Impressive.
So
Sweet.
I remember just seeing that eye on the cover and just being like, I gotta rent this game. So technically, the first game that I bought and played was RE2, and then I went back and did one and director's cut. So that's why I think two is so nostalgic to me. It's the one that spoke to me the most, because it was the first one that I really got into, at that level. but I did go back and play one. I kind of skipped three when it was coming out. I have like this weird purist mentality of like one, two, and done kind of thing. Maybe that's like from Turtles, like the first two movies, like the third one just kind of, you know,
Doesn't
threw me off.
exist.
Yeah.
That's the Mandela effect we need to happen. We need it to not exist.
Right.
Right. So I kind of skipped three at the time and didn't think of anything of it, but then eventually got back around to it. I was like, oh, Nemesis is really cool. I gotta check this out. And then obviously we're talking about four a little bit. I was a GameCube adopter, right away on that. So it just rich long history with these games. But I would say two was my big jumping off point.
Awesome. Very cool. Amazing game to start off with, I'd say. It's that introduction, that fire, being stuck in that small alley with those
Yep.
tank controls and the tense music.
Yeah.
Music is so memorable in those games. So
It's
it's up there
interesting that
for
you talk
me.
about, looking at it in gaming magazines because I hadn't even thought of that until you said it. I did the exact same thing. And then but I was never allowed to play, when I was younger. Like it was just my parents were pretty strict about what I was allowed to play. It was the same kind of deal. I could sneak stuff at friends' houses, or if I could slide something past my parents at Blockbuster. You remember they used to have that game program where you could rent, like, what was it, a game a day or something like that throughout the week, or one
Yeah.
game per week over the summer, and you just go back in and keep swapping them out.
Yep.
I used to do that, but we would go to Dave and Buster's, and I would play House of the Dead to get
Nice.
my Resident Evil fix. So in
Yeah.
my young mind, I was like, these are the same thing. Like Resident Evil is House of the Dead, and you can play at home, but I'm gonna play House of the Dead at Dave and Buster's. So I would go and I would play for hours House of the
Yes.
Dead, and to get my Resident Evil fix. So that's funny. That all kind of goes full circle there.
Yeah.
Sweet, sweet. So I'm gonna make you guys feel old because I'm the old guy here as always, especially with my birthday in a couple of days as of recording. I'll be
Hey.
41,
Whew,
41, ladies and gentlemen. Old man.
but
So
Grandpa.
my first Resident Evil experience, fortunately, is the first game.
Nice.
And it was the first game I ever pre-ordered before
Wow.
I came out because I read it in a magazine and I fell in love with the fact that it was zombie related. It gave me kind of George Romero vibes. I'm a huge, a Night of the Living Dead fan
Oh yeah.
and always love zombies. And that cover of the over dramatic Chris freaking out, like that was just like terrifying to me. And I remember picking it up at Electronics Boutique in the Staten Island Mall with the core guys that worked in that store for so many years that I ended up working for before a lot of them left, which was amazing for me. Um, Picking that up, going to my uncle's house, playing that game, and just being in complete awe with how intense and nerve wracking a game can be, and just being on the edge of my seat. Plus, my first introduction into survival horror was earlier than that, which was around 91, funny enough, because I had a Tandy computer and I had my first experience with Alone in the Dark, for those that are familiar.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And my computer wasn't a beefy computer, by comparison to what you could get those days. Like, I didn't have a full fledged sound card and my processor barely ran it, so I can understand that now. But back then, it's how I thought the game ran. And the game was a little
Yeah.
slow. So the
Yeah.
walking was slow. And then when you have these monsters chasing you, I remember just like having goosebumps all the time playing with a keyboard and a mouse, going, oh my God, like this guy's chasing me. And I never got past like 10 minutes into the game until like 5 years ago, where I played it like on an emulator. And I'm
Nice.
like, holy crap, I got down the stairs like insane. Like when I tell you, because you had one of Tyler's favorites, you had broke weapons that take damage. So you had a saber, an old rusty saber that you would get, and you hitting the enemy. That's all you have at that point in the game.
Yeah.
Breaks. So yeah, you're just hitting them with the hilt.
Mm-hmm.
So that got my itch going of like, oh my God, like I need more games like this. And then you didn't see anything for a long time.
Yeah.
So then I see a magazine and I see some weird green monster chasing a guy, and then I see zombies, and then I'm like, I need this. And
Yeah.
that was it. Putting that game on changed my life in so many ways. It is literally my top three franchises because I have others that we know I'm a big fan of. But when it comes to horror, it's my baby. It always has been. After that, two played to burnt to the ground. Had to replace my disc two because I played it so much it stopped reading.
Yep.
Resident Evil 3, I was able to import because I was into the import game at the time. And I played Biohazard 3 Last Escape. And I bought that game because I had my PlayStation with the mod, with the toothpick crazy glued into the porthole so that it would spin and you could disc swap.
Jesus,
Then,
man.
and then I used to mod the chip. I used to actually do mod chips because I worked in a mom and pop shop called Game Champ, and I used to mod the systems too.
Yep.
So there was a lot of love for all that. The spring loading. Yep.
Yep.
So I mean,
Games on.
it got all the way to Code Veronica. I imported Code Veronica on Dreamcast also. And I've been diehard since. I imported Resident Evil Survivor, unfortunately, Biohazard Survivor. I've played Dead Aim. I've played it all. I've even played the Guncom games from Japan. There was Code Veronica, Guncon, like so much love. there's
Yeah.
there's not a game in the franchise that I don't like. I appreciate Outbreak. A game I would love to see be remade that I don't think ever will. Resident Evil Gaiden for Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
Unsung hero of a game. My favorite character, Resident Evil, Barry Burton, does not get enough love. He's only been in 3 games, and that was one of them.
Yep.
But yeah, that's my initial experience, and I've been hardcore ever since.
So you say
So
you pre-ordered the first one. Did you have to like call in on a rotary phone to make that happen?
no, you
How do
walked
you
it.
how do you pre-order before the
Damn, dude.
internet?
Jesus Christ, damn, dude. Don't make me feel that old. Oh my god, that's like my friend on Facebook the other day was telling the world about like his daughter. He was showing her a movie about something. He's like, "You guys had color back then in the '80s?" It's like what?
Yeah.
But no, back then like pre-orders weren't a big deal. It was like you did it when you knew what you wanted, and
Yeah.
you walked into the store and you would drop $5, and they would call you. They would call you and say, "Hey, your game's come in." But obviously, like I followed the books with the street dates, and I remember going. I'm like, "Is the game here?" They're like, "Oh, we're unpacking the box as we speak." So I had to
Yeah.
wait for them to actually process the box. So, and back then too, Funko was a big part of the game. That's when like games used to start to be able to sell stuff. You used to walk in. We had a big newspaper like paper that had all the trade-in pricing on it. So you'd have
Wow.
like literally a list of NES, Genesis. Oh, you could trade in Chrono Trigger for $65. Like you used to get good money for games back then
Yeah.
because even then they had value. Remember that?
Yeah. You also get pennies on the dollar for certain things too.
This is true. This is true because we used to just take everything.
Yeah.
So we'd have piles in the back.
Yeah.
But then you had consoles in the front of the store that you can demo and play. We'd let you play a game before you bought it if we had one open, like just stuff that you'll never get again.
Yeah.
A good time to be a gamer.
Yeah.
And with peak games like Resident Evil. So
Yeah,
all
for
right,
sure.
awesome. Let's get to the next important bit. First, scary, or actually scariest moment for you in any game in the franchise. I usually say first because that's like the one that like kind of makes or breaks. Like holy shit. But again, there's been scary stuff in more recent games, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
So Tyler, if you can think about it, one of your scariest moments in a Resident Evil game,
Oh,
like
it's
true.
it's the fucking baby.
I knew it. I knew
No,
it.
yeah, yeah. I have never noped out. I've never set a controller down and been like, nah. No, thank you. That fucking baby.
La la
Yeah, no.
la
Nope, nope, nope.
la.
Because I heard it and I
Yep,
was like,
that's
there's
all it
no
takes.
fucking way. I was like, there's no fucking way that that's what's going on right now. And then I turned around and I saw it and I shit my pants. I said, get the fuck out of here. What is wrong
Yeah.
with you? No.
That,
We still have to find time to do that in VR because
Yes,
it is possible, ladies and gentlemen. Resident
I
Evil Village
know. I
VR.
told you. I like I said, so I played it on my computer. So I play most stuff on my PC if I can. I played it, I beat it, I got 100%. I did all the achievements, everything on Steam, and I have repurchased the game on my PS5 just so I can play through it in VR. Um,
nice.
but honestly, like if it's not that, it's probably when I went back and played uh through the older games and the first time you see a liquor, that the first time the liquor got me is
On
one
the
of the,
ceiling.
yeah, that's probably the first, the earliest shocking scare that I can remember from the franchise. Yeah, is getting
Did your
snagged
boy.
by the liquor and just understanding I'm fucked. Like the acceptance of I'm going to try to get away. I'm going to fucking die. I need to figure out how to overcome this because it's totally different than anything else you've fought so far. So it was a combination of the initial fright, the character design, and the understanding of, okay, I've just started to get comfortable with this game and I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing, and now it's all been turned on its head, and I have to contend with something else that really just, it was just that sinking feeling of, oh my god, they've done it. Um, so that would probably be my earliest scare that I can recall.
Oh, those great moments in Resident Evil history.
Sure.
Chris, what about you?
So yeah, the earliest one is the liquor for sure. That was iconic. You know, the character design of that brain on the outside, and it's all red and menacing, and you have like a almost 50-50 chance of getting past it or not.
Yeah,
Now, you know, as an adult gamer, it's a lot easier to just navigate. But at the
right.
time when you're playing it as a young kid, you're like, oh, what do I do? You tense up and you just get that feeling of like anxiety, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge moment. Um, I hope I don't steal yours in the first one, but when the dog jumps out of that window, that first corridor, when you get through that hallway, you're not expecting that at all. And any jump scare, like a jump scare in a game, was like unheard of at the time. So for them to pull that off and just like dogs are scary sometimes, like as a kid, like I had a couple of bad experiences where dogs bit me, or like, yeah, I had a Dalmatian attack me at one point. So like I had a little bit of, preconceived fear of dogs going into it, and now this thing's a zombie dog coming at me. Forget it. That set me off.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That was
Yeah.
definitely up there for me. It was my first, obviously, shit my pants moment in a video game, and yeah, I had a hard time sleeping that night because I played a good amount of the game, and I remember where I like got stuck, like the first time I ever got stuck in the game, and it was literally when you meet the hunters. So the
Oh,
hunters, right in the beginning, that's cinematic. So now you're not getting a traditional jump scare the way you got with the dog, because the dog scares you because it comes out of nowhere in game. You now get a cinematic and first person view of something chasing you, hunting you really fast, jumping and bouncing off the walls. Then all of a sudden, when you're in game, it's fucking walking at you, normal pace. Then all of a sudden, it starts chasing you. So you have like seconds to decide what the hell you're going to do. But here's my biggest problem: I had no ammo left because I just finished fighting Plant 42, that dirty cocksucking rat bastard of a plant, and wasted all of my ammo before Barry came to my rescue playing as Jill. And I have nothing to defend myself other than my knife. You know the knife's not going to do you any good because I don't even get a chance to attack because you know what he does, right? He leaps at you, lops your head off, one shot, dead,
It's night
Done
night.
so.
jaw dropped. I remember like what just happened. And then I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. Like it didn't hit me until after the fact because it just happened so fast.
Yeah.
So for me, that's it. Like, that was just the liquor's up there as well. Because again, early on in the game, you don't have a lot of an arsenal at the time yet. You're
Yeah.
kind of in the realm of the dog where you're like maybe 5, 6 corridors in.
Yeah.
You're really not far in the game. Um, but other than that, it would be freaking Nemesis chasing and chasing you.
Yeah.
That dread that you have of just like, oh my God, oh my God. But then,
Yeah.
but for me, like I would say number one of just like panic is a snake
Oh,
because of the snake and the poison in the house. Like, Tyler, did you play PlayStation original? Or did you play the remake? Out of
Remake.
curiosity. Okay. So
Yeah.
you've never played the original.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So, think about the archaic graphics at the time compared to now,
Right.
those tank controls in a very small corridor. You just witnessed your friend pretty much die from a snake wound. You're going in there to get something and you come face to face with the snake and you don't have too many places to go. And then, you finally get out and then your character collapses from poison. And you're just like the anxiety of like, what happened? I beat it. I did it. Why? Nerve
Yeah.
wracking. So that the snake is, I feel, an unsung hero when it comes to like enemies. Like not enough
Yeah.
people talk about the stupid snake. But that first moment, again, RE1 PlayStation has some of my favorite music in any game because just the intensity of the kind of orchestral style that they went with. Like it gets you. You're like, oh shit, you're on your toes, fighting the tyrant at the end. Same thing, just nerve wracking, small corridors, shitty controls at the time. It's all you have. Up is forward. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, man, memories, good stuff. Just scary as shit.
Yeah. Resident Evil, more than I would say probably more than any other horror franchise in terms of video games, really instills the fight or flight. Like
Yeah.
most other horror games, you really only have one of those options. Like you'll have sections where you have to fight, you have sections where you have to run and you can't fight. But almost every encounter other than boss fights in Resident Evil, it is a fight or flight. You can either fight or you can run away, and both are viable options, which gives the whole game so much more depth, I feel like. And it's one of the big reasons why Resident Evil is the pinnacle of survival horror and has been for so long.
Yeah.
Have to agree.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it changed a bit once Resident Evil 4 came along. So we could talk a little bit about Resident Evil 4 now, I'd say. And, we'll focus on the original since we've all played that. We
Yeah.
could talk, and then we'll talk a little bit about the demo, if anything.
Yeah.
But if you remember, Resident Evil 4 like just went a little more in the action orientation. The camera angle changed to that traditional third person, like many games at the time. GameCube, there was a lot of innovation going on. So, a lot of people at first were like, all right, it's becoming an action game. But then everybody else was like, holy shit, this is where the game needs to go.
Yeah.
So you had puzzles, you had action, you had intensity, you had unfortunately quick time events, which I've never been a fan of in all my life. But there was just so much to offer, and then you have a returning popular character of Leon Kennedy. People loved it. People wanted more of Leon after Resident Evil 2, and we got it. We got it on a whole nother level. But there was always another version of the game that could have been. I assume both of you might be familiar. Chris probably more so. Like we had trailers leading up to Resident Evil 4 where the game was very different.
Yeah.
It was way more of a darker atmosphere. There was some kind of supernatural elements,
Mm.
and the game got rebuilt several times before we got what we got. And it's interesting because that's the second time that that happened in the franchise. You know, for those that are familiar with Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 2 was originally a game without Claire. We had Eliza
Yeah.
Walker as a secondary character, and the precinct was very different. And we now know that game as fans as Resident Evil 1.5. And I remember experiencing a demo back in the day of PlayStation Underground. Used to be physical discs that came with magazines. I don't know if that's too old for you, Tyler. Like you used to get a magazine and you got a demo disc, and it'd come with a bunch of demos. And I remember because there was a music video for a band that I ended up growing to really like that was in the ska world. I'm not a big ska guy, but this band had a video on here. I'm like, this song is awesome. I'm going to listen to this band now. And then you had a trailer for Resident Evil, and it was 1.5. It is not what we got. So it's just funny how the franchise has had a lot of changes over the years. But I would say, despite a lot of people going to Resident Evil 2, 4 is the one a lot of people have stuck with over the years because
Yeah.
we just hit the 18-year anniversary of the original Resident Evil 4 release on GameCube. Insane. And now we're getting a remake, like not a reimagining, not a remaster, a remake.
Mm-hmm.
And we in a world where we've had plenty of remasters, a lot of them shit, and mostly decent remakes. There's a lot of excitement to happen, but let's talk about like what you guys what was your experience with Resident Evil 4? Like, did you guys play it a lot? Chris, I assume you did. Tyler, I don't know how much you've delved into that original game, even if it was like, you know, the 13th release, because it's a game like Skyrim that has been released on every platform pretty much up
Oh yeah.
until, you know, the modern consoles.
No, I'll
But
let Chris lead this one.
All right. Yeah. So with Resident Evil 4 for me, I had very similar feelings to it. I was skeptical with the new style that was going in, but I knew that I was already going into this franchise, loving it. So I was all in. I bought the game off the bat. Um, and I guess to maybe circle back to the scares, the chainsaw guy, the chain
the
that
doctor, good old doctor.
I mean, when that scene hits and you first go through, when you take an L from that guy, that's you're defeated. You're just it's there's no describing that feeling. I've been beheaded by a chainsaw. How do I restart or do I just give up?
It's
No.
true.
So
Very true.
they're definitely set a really great tone. Even like missing a quick time event could mean disaster. Um, I don't hate them as much as they get panned for. And I think to go back to what you're saying about four being so beloved, I mean, it was one of the first Resident Evil games to really get like high critical scores. Like I think it got like nines and tens from different gaming outlets.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely put the franchise on the map because it was so well received. And it was the first of its kind to really have that over the shoulder, type of view. So it revolutionized the way we look at third person now.
Yeah.
Agreed. I feel a lot of people adopted, mechanics and functionality and even just the survival horror elements. You have plenty of games that have gone that route, whether they were successful or not. But you're absolutely right. It
Yeah,
was
and you can definitely
a
still see
game
that.
changer.
now. Like you can see the threads of Resident Evil 4 through current games. And I mean, a lot of people won't necessarily look back and credit it that way, but having gone back and replayed, so I did. I went back and replayed the original when I got around to playing 4, and you can see so much of what grew into other games and other franchises later on down the line that started there. And you're right, it was the first one that I ever saw like advertisements for out in the world, like going to game stores. You would have, the big banners at like GameStops or whatever. You would have the banners and the posters and stuff. And that's the first Resident Evil I remember seeing out, as opposed to just in publications and magazines and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's definitely the first one that seemed like it hit the zeitgeist in the same way that the following games have.
Yeah, I would say they definitely put more money into the marketing for that game as well. And,
Absolutely.
interestingly enough, it being on the GameCube was definitely an
Best
unusual
console.
choice at the time. It's up there
I
for
love the
me.
GameCube. I fucking
Yeah.
love the GameCube. And that's one of the reasons that I went back to play the original too, is because I was like, no, no, no. Any excuse to dust off the GameCube. I still have a GameCube here. I mean, I don't hook it up and play it, but I still have it. And it's one of the only, it makes me sick to my stomach to call it a retro console, but it's one of the only retro consoles that I still have. But that's just it. It was a perfect video game system. I loved it. I loved the
It
little
just needed
fucking
it just needed
discs,
more
the
software.
form
That's all.
factor, I love the controllers. I don't care what anybody says. GameCube controllers, unbeatable. Unbeatable.
I still play it on the Switch. I still use
Yes,
them for Smash. It's the go-to.
absolutely. Yeah, there is no, in my mind, and I don't think that's just rose-colored glasses looking back, like it hit at the perfect time of my childhood or anything like that. The GameCube was a fantastic system. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. So I went back and played Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube when I went to do my playthrough finally. And I had some buddies that were like, "No, man," because it had been updated at that point by the time that got around to playing it. And I was like, "No, no, no, no." And I think I paid $100. I shit you not. I think I paid $100 for a copy because at that time there
Yeah.
there were no
The
there were no
market.
copies. Yeah, and you couldn't find GameCube games. Most places didn't sell them anymore, and if they did not have Resident Evil 4. So I ended up
Yeah.
having to go to some little secondhand game shop. It was like 45 minutes away from my house. I tracked down a copy, and I think it was $100 I had to pay to get that copy, but it was worth it. And I still have it. I have it somewhere in storage with my GameCube. I have a lot of my old GameCube games. I've got Smash. I've got that. I have Return of the King. Yes.
Nah.
Nice. Nice.
Yes. But yeah, so I went back and played Resident Evil 4 in that way. And believe it or not, that's the only one I've played. I have not played any of the other iterations of Resident Evil 4. So this remake will be the first time since playing it on the GameCube that I've played it, which is very
Interesting.
exciting.
That's a really great dynamic
Yeah.
because you're going from first to last in a sense. And
Yep.
I'm pretty sure Chris and I have played it on pretty much every system except for there was a Brazilian console that was like a mobile console that we definitely didn't play it on. But I played it on my phone. I played it
Yeah.
on everything. Wii, you
The
name it.
Wii. Oh, what an interesting
Yep.
control scheme on the Wii.
Yeah, that was weird.
Able to actually point this time.
Yeah.
Ah, that was cool. That
All
was really
right. So with the love of Resident Evil 4, we now have less than 2 weeks, I'd say, to the release of the remake.
Yeah.
And Capcom has put out a demo. The demo is limitless and it is called the Resident Evil 4 Remake Chainsaw Demo. While I can limit what I say, I will be reviewing and covering Resident Evil 4 Remake for Gaming Age. We will have a show to speak about it once the game is released. I have beaten it twice already. I will leave it at that. So I have not played the Chainsaw demo, but I would like Chris to spearhead and tell us his experience because I know that he's played it and I really want to know what he thinks.
Yep.
Yeah. So the chainsaw demo came like almost out of nowhere for me, and I get the text from a good friend of mine, Joey JCM. He says RE4 demo's up. I ran to my console, downloaded it, and then had to go do something else. So I had to come back to it another time. Then I finally gave it a proper go and played this demo, and I have some thoughts off the bat. I took some notes and kind of just, was going through it a little more deliberately to kind of get a good journalistic approach to playing the game like that. And I could tell you off the bat the pace of which he walks, Leon. They really are selling the exploration with his walk. It's really slow, but then when you push the stick and you go to run, he runs, normally fast like you would. But you want to go slow because you might, miss something. And the fact that it's a limitless demo was a really great thing because a couple of years ago there was two other demos. There was the 7 demo, and then I think what was it, the Maiden demo?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And they were
I'll tell
both
you this.
timed.
I did not even play the Maiden demo. I left it pristine because it's just a weird thing. I don't want to be timed doing something. I want to be able to, at least say that I have that available to me. So I never
Yeah.
played it. I waited until the game.
It's funny enough that out of all of the demos, the Maiden demo was a part of that was not included in the game, which
I
is
didn't think
funny.
Sevens was either. That's what I was about to ask. I didn't think the Resident Evil 7
So,
demo was included, was it?
so the 7 VR experience was not. It was partly included.
Right.
And for those that can't see, I'm doing the air quotes because there was the VHS tape that you got in Resident Evil 7 where
Right.
you went back to certain, secondary characters. And the VR experience was essentially one of those characters tied to a chair, which was you at that time.
Right.
You don't get to experience that in the game, but you understand that it's from one of those characters.
Yeah.
In the maiden portion takes place way before the game, where you're playing just a woman that has been captured, that's a prisoner essentially in the castle, and you're in the dungeon area, but you don't really get to go anywhere else. You're
Yeah.
like very isolated to where you are. So it was kind of just to show off a certain aspect of the game, but you were not playing as our main protagonist for the game.
Yeah.
You were not playing as Ethan.
Yeah.
Ethan Winters.
Ethan Winters.
Yeah.
Ethan Winters, you've killed my daughters.
Damn,
Nah.
you are
Can't
way
she's
too good
all
at that.
he is glossy. But yeah, so let's continue with your thoughts,
Yeah, yeah,
please.
yeah.
The world is beautiful. If you turn around as soon as you get into the demo, you can see the car of which you came from. There's little things that, like, if you just take the time to really explore, you can really be rewarded for, which is nice. The modern control scheme based off of the RE2, RE3 remake engine is just beautiful and lends itself perfectly to this game.
Great.
And this is what everyone was waiting for, in all honesty. uh I feel like just talking about remakes in general, I feel like every single Resident Evil remake has been pretty much a hit.
Yeah.
I would say, even as far as the GameCube remake, the 2 is still probably one of my all-time favorite games, and the 3 one was great also. So now with 4, it's not going to be a miss. Like, even based off this demo, I had so much fun with the demo alone that I could just imagine, if you saying, you were able to go through it twice, I'm going to go through this game multiple times. And I played the demo one time through with notes and was, really going slow. And it's interesting going through and seeing scenes that you've played on a past system before and seeing like, you know, all the detail, like the pictures on the wall, and you know, the encounters that you have in with like a fresh coat of paint, or like, you know, or more than just a fresh coat of paint, like so many layers of detail that you can see that you would have never been able to see on GameCube.
Yeah.
So really interesting. And then, you know, the action starts to ramp up. And I have a question I'm going to pose after this, but when you get in and the action kicks in and Leon starts to kick some ass. So now, all right, here's where I'm going to segue and pose a question. So we talked about Chris in 5 doing his boulder punch. Who you got? Is it Leon or is it boulder punching Chris?
Now we're speaking Leon with pretty much parrying a chainsaw with his combat knife.
Yes. Yes.
That's a tough one. I mean, realistically, I can see a quick parry from a chainsaw, like nudging away and maybe losing the
You
knife in
lose
the
that knife,
process,
dude. That knife
but
is
not
gone.
but not sitting there and letting the rotors hit it repeatedly. Um yeah, but you know what? I that's tough. That's
Yeah,
tough.
it's a tough
I
one.
feel like anybody punching a boulder to hell,
Yeah.
fighting near lava and not burning alive is probably a
Yeah.
bit more far fetched. Um,
Yes.
I love that Leon kicks ass in this. I love the parrying system.
Yeah.
That's a big component that I'll speak to that much and say that, you know, that's helped reduce the quick time events.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I won't be
That's
able to
good.
speak too much to that, but that is something that kind of revamps how you handle some of those scenarios. And you could parry just about anything.
Yeah.
So if you could parry a chainsaw, you could parry a pick at you know, a pitchfork, and some
You can
if
dodge a
somebody's
wrench,
throwing
you can dodge a ball.
exactly, they throw a hatchet at you, you can actually parry it midair, which is really cool too. So
I did my
um
first parry by accident, actually. I
parry
I was
like the
trying to
Street Fighter 3.
yeah, I was trying to whip out my knife at one point, and I just hit the button. I was like,
Whoops.
"Oh, that's in the game. Wow, that's so cool." Um, I don't know. I don't know if, like I said, I only played it a little bit, but is there some element of like the dodge from 3 that Jill has? Because I feel like he was juking, like I was running. I don't know if it happens like innately.
It with the PlayStation, the circle button gives you kind of the crouching because you could do
Yeah.
some stealth. So I've felt that it works in certain aspects. In a lot of scenarios, the evade trigger comes up. So
Yeah.
the evade will be the button, and he'll end up dodging stuff. So if
Okay.
there's an enemy swiping something at you that's maybe a little larger, you might get an evade. Outside of that, there's not a traditional Resident Evil 3 Jill that she has, like the juke. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
forgive me if I've missed it, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, once you play the game, I don't think there's a quick turn because I'm trying to figure it out and I don't think it exists. If I didn't do it, forgive me because I've played it this long at this point and
Right.
I'm like 20 something hours in and I'm like, I don't see a quick turn anywhere. So that's a little frustrating. It's not a deal breaker, but it's kind of weird when you're in those scenarios and you're kind of getting pigeonholed to a corner. You got to
Yeah.
do a lot of you're doing a lot of backing up, you know.
Yeah.
And that village scene, you know, is obviously a pivotal moment in the game. So it was a great way for people to experience that first. And it's as intense as you remember, and it probably gets even harder at the harder difficulties. Something that's great that I know that they have spoken about is when the doctor, you know, has comes out with the chainsaw. There are certain areas where if you're fighting him for an X amount of time, he'll actually damage part of the area, and it'll permanently change that area for the entirety of the game. So obviously, for those that remember, you kind of revisit you know, you kind of walk back through here at certain points,
Yeah.
and yeah, like there's a point where he hacks off some columns and kind of, you know, part of the house comes down, it stays down and you have to find
Wow.
another way around, which is
Yeah.
really cool. So I like that they included that.
That's
And
um
another big piece I loved about 7 was when you fight in the garage.
Yes.
if the fight
Yeah.
goes on for a long enough time, there's damage done to the garage and one of the doors gets blasted open. And then when you come back later to revisit, if the fight went on long enough for the doors to get blasted open, you can return into the garage and there's actually a massive amount of loot. There's a bunch of ammo and stuff that you can only get if you've allowed the fight to blow the doors off the garage. So
Nice.
when you come back, that's they've definitely, I think there's a piece like that in Village as well,
Yes.
where there's permanent damage done if you allow, if the right steps are taken, basically. So it's
Right.
cool to see that come back around.
Agreed. And
Even just
there's
letting
plenty
him,
of that.
yeah,
Good.
yeah, letting him chase you through the door. You're
Yes.
standing on the other side of the door, and that chainsaw just comes through the door, and he just sizes out the middle, and now
It's
that's
awesome.
gone. It lets the floodgates open.
Yeah. Great experience. And it's
Yeah,
awesome to see how many people have been playing it for so long and are like trying to find nooks and crannies. And
yeah,
I'm curious if some of that stuff translated to the game. Like I was going to start a new game just to try some of the stuff that people are doing. Like I don't know if you saw people like unlock some machine gun in the demo by like randomly deciding to drop all their loot in the house before they go to the village, and it literally opens an area in the village that's not open unless you do that.
Wow.
It's
that's so
insane. And the
cool.
demo has been out since Friday. So we're, as of recording, 3 days.
People are
Yeah,
Insane.
wild, man.
yeah,
So for me, on the flip side of that, I look forward to people playing it because there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot to unlock. There's
yeah.
a lot of content in the game, and I don't know anything about. I haven't found everything yet, obviously.
Right.
So I know that people will help me be able to go back and say, "Oh, figure that out and figure that out." Like there's a certain thing that I was trying to complete, and I just for the life could not figure it out. I'm like, I need help, and I can't get help because I'm playing it early, and it's like
Right.
it's really exciting. And the one thing I'll leave you guys with the thoughts on Resident Evil Remake: try to go in as blind as you can.
Yeah,
Don't treat it as a game you've played before. I
Yeah.
could say that's going to be the best experience for you. For me, I saw some stuff, obviously, but it's such a fresh experience. It's like playing Final Fantasy VII Remake.
right.
It's a different enough experience where you can reminisce on what you remember, but appreciate what's changed and know that the core of the game is there. I'll leave it at that. And I really think people are going to enjoy it. I think there's going to be critics out there as expected, but there's a lot of fun to be had. And
Yeah.
I wish
Demo
that
is any indication, and you can just, I'm sorry if I cut you,
no,
but
no,
yeah, if the demo is any indication of it, and you can replay it over and over, and people are finding all these new things about it, like I sat there and I wanted to bring in like a small topic of like the psyche of a player. So what goes through your psyche when you have a game that allows you to stare at a rotting corpse for unlimited amount of time? Like I click on a like like a dead deer or whatever it was, and I'm like, is this gonna change? Is anything gonna happen here? And I'm like, wow, that was 15 seconds too long. Or was it? Or was it? Like,
Yeah.
am I fascinated by a rotting maggot filled corpse right now? Like, am I gonna sit here and do this over and over? And then
yeah,
like
you definitely are.
and then the other
That's
part, like you take a guy out, he's laying on the floor, I can continue to stab him over and over and over and over and over, and it never gets old.
agreed.
Am I a psychopath?
No, you're just a fan of horror, like many of us
Right.
are.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, listen, we're gonna wrap it up because we don't like to keep our shows too long. We want to keep you guys interested and entertained. We could talk all day about this stuff as we love it. I will leave you guys with for those that are watching on our YouTube show. I have opened up my lady Dimitrescu and I wanted to show her off.
Ah, yes.
She is a tall girl, super
Ah,
Look
super
at that.
tall.
gorgeous.
She is awesome. For some reason, her top comes off, and I don't know why. We're not going to do that
Yeah.
in the show because we don't want to put nudity on here.
Mm.
But yeah, it's a little unusual, but it's a very nice mold. we were going to talk a little bit about toys. I think maybe Chris and I can do a Press for Toys show one day and
Oh
maybe
yeah.
discuss some of our third party and original first party stuff, but we don't have time for that today. But
Yeah.
thank you all for coming in. Grizz, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Look at
Lots of
that.
fun, an amazing remake on or whatever you want to call that. Resident Evil 1 on DS. I loved that game. Perfect game for original.
Oh,
But
excellent.
thank you all so much. We're really excited to continue the show. We have some great content coming. We have a super special guest lined up in the coming month. We can't talk about it yet until it's official, but we
Yep.
will let you know. We're super excited for it. And we hope to talk to you all soon. Hey, you guys have anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
Nope, I'm good. We'll have a link to Chris, your show. We'll link that
Sure.
here in yep. And any other if you want to share your socials or anything like that that you want to plug here.
Yeah, just at GrizDiS and at Never Enough Toys podcast. And we can't leave off without talking about Benny's chainsaw controller that you used to have. I
Oh
don't know if you still
boy.
have it, but
I don't, unfortunately. It was one of the greatest unnecessary inventions ever made. I had both
Wow.
versions. There was one for GameCube and one for PlayStation, and I had them both. And they were in like these crazy unique cases, and it literally was a mini chainsaw, but it was a full controller.
yep.
So good
What the
times.
hell?
Yep. Tyler, you'll have to go do your homework after and go do a Google search for that. You'll
Apparently,
appreciate it.
yeah.
All
Yeah, I'll
right,
have to jump on
everybody.
it.
We'll let you go. We have no more time left. Have a great day. Take care and have fun. We'll talk to you
Thanks,
soon,
everyone.
everybody.
See you
Bye.
guys.